Welcome to the Next Gen Podcast. This is Pastor Blake, and joining me today.
Welcome to the
Pastor
Bridge
Phil.
Church Next Gen
Our
Podcast. This is
children's
Pastor
pastor.
Blake.
Our
Joined with me
Waukesha
today is
campus
our
children's
kids
pastor,
pastor in
and we
Waukesha,
are
Pastor
excited
Phil.
to talk with you.
And we
about
are so
something,
excited to be
very
talking
near
about
and dear
something
to
today
our
that
hearts today,
really our
something that,
church has been going
we've been
after pretty
working
heavily
hard
for the
at this
past,
year.
is it
right?
2
And
years?
we-
Every year.
Yeah, it's about
Every
2
year.
years.
Coming up on 2 years, we
believe
launched
in,
this thing called
missions.
Pathways.
Kingdom builders.
And we're going to
Kingdom
talk
builders and
about
how
how
we're
that
gonna talk about
applies
a
to
couple different
discipleship, how
things
it
that
applies to
we
you,
do to
discipling
encourage
your
students,
your
young
kids.
ones to
And I'm
kind of
excited
comprehend
to
and grasp
dive into what this
missions,
is. And,
what that
and
looks
before
like
we get
in our
going,
different
Phil, can
departments
you
and
just
what you
tell
can
us
do
kind
as
of what
parents
Pathways
to
is and how it
facilitate that
applies
in
to
your
us
homes.
today?
So
Now,
I'm
the whole
excited
idea
for
behind the
today.
pathway
for those who
practices
do not
is
know
that
what
every
missions
believer,
means,
every
Yeah.
Christian should be growing.
the world needs Jesus, and without Jesus, people perish. That's
Right.
There are
the
a few
truth
things
of
more
the gospel.
dangerous
The
than
good
a
news
Christian
that
who
we
thinks,
are headed to
you know,
hell
I've grown
with our
far
sin,
enough.
and
I think
Jesus
I'm
came
okay
and
here
died in
for
our
a
place.
while.
And so we need to tell as
Because
many
that's
people
where
as
really
possible.
dangerous
And
things
so
happen.
brother.
Because
that
you
is
know
what
you're never
missions
gonna
is.
be
It's us
perfect,
leaving
but you
where
keep
we are
striving
to go
for
somewhere else
Christ-like
and tell somebody
perfection
about
every
Jesus.
day.
Yep.
Because as soon
Now
as you
that
stop
can
growing,
happen
you start
through
dying.
us
Right.
And
praying
so
for
the
missionaries
pathway
already out
practices
there
are
doing
7
that
areas
work in
in
other
which
countries. It can
Bridge
mean us
Church
giving and supporting
believes
their needs.
every
buying
Christian should be
materials
growing.
and
And so
vehicles. It
it's
could
not
also
that you
mean
have to
us
grow in all of them at
preparing to
once.
go
But
and become a
there's other
missionary.
areas in which
Leave
you
where
should
we are to
grow,
go
but these
somewhere
are
else
7 that we
just for
think
the
are among the
just
most
for the purpose
important.
of sharing
So
the
every
gospel,
Christian
and that's what
should
we
be
try to
growing these
instill
7
in the
areas,
kids and the
and when
students.
you do,
Right, and at Bridge Church, we
you're
call
not
that
going to have to
Kingdom
work on
Builders.
all of them at
Everything
once.
we do
Just
with
kind of
missions
focus in
is
on
under
whichever
the
one you
of
think you
Kingdom
need to
Builders,
grow
and
in
so
at
we
the
have a few
time.
different
Work
categories.
on it for a little
For
while.
that,
When you
we
feel
have
like you've made
local
progress in that
missions,
area,
we
you
have,
pick up another one.
investing in the
Why don't
next
you go and read through the
generation,
Yes.
7
missions,
pathway
yes,
practices?
I will
Different
rattle
things we
these
do,
off,
and like you
outreach
said, these
events.
aren't like,
We
hey,
call it
we're kind of
Kingdom
all
Builders.
7
But
right now and be
within
experts
both of
on
our
them. But I
departments,
think
we
that one
have
at a time
things,
approach
programs
is really
that we
pivotal,
give
especially
towards that support
we'll talk
kind of
more
some
about
different
how
stuff.
you've
And so
kind
we're
of
with the
developed that for
Assemblies of
students
God
later.
and with the
But
Assemblies
the
of God,
7
they have a
practices
couple
are
different programs for the
self-denial,
youth and
daily
for the
prayer,
kids
Bible
departments.
engagement,
And so for
360
the youth,
faith,
we have this thing
spirit-led,
called Speed the
mission-minded,
Light.
and
And what
healthy
Speed the Light is, it's a
community. And
missions
so those are 7
organization
things
that
that at Bridge
goes to
Church we
help
would say,
missionaries
if you want to grow
with
deeper in your
transportation and
relationship
effective
with Christ,
communication. And so that
apart
looks
from
like
just coming
buying
on a Sunday or
vehicles,
joining a bridge group,
for
here's
missionaries
7
to go into
things
the
that are
mountains, or
pivotal in your
buying
walk. And
buses.
like
camels.
there's
Like
probably
camels.
more,
They will buy-
but
they
these
will
are
buy
important
living
to focus
vehicles
on and to look
Some
at.
living
so
vehicles.
cool.
I know.
Work
a
on
couple
it.
years
So
ago,
how
bought,
have you
like, some
taken these
Vespas
7
and
things
stuff
that we've
for,
kind of
Italy
launched to our
to cruise around
congregation,
the streets and
to our adult
so what that
services and said, hey,
transportation
these are
looks like
important. How
is,
have
of
you
course, different. They also
kind of
field
modified them
communication, so
for
different
your
materials and
students
sound
who are
systems and
anywhere,
things where
for anywhere
they
from
are able to
kindergarten to 5th
communicate
grade?
that gospel.
Yeah,
So
shockingly,
to go
not very much.
to actually
I think it's
tell
really,
the gospel and then how to actually tell it.
as a
with that
philosophy, I
communication.
just
That's kind
don't
of what
believe
Speed the
as a
Light is.
children's
We partner
pastor and
with
as a
them
parent, I don't
every
believe
year
that
in
there's
different
any
capacities.
concept
You would
that
talk about
a child cannot
BGMC?
understand if it's
Yeah.
taught on their level. They can learn the exact
the Assemblies
same
of God has many
truths.
missions branches.
They just need
you
a
know,
different
world
method
missions,
Yeah,
to
right.
It's just
communicate
kinda
them.
general
There's no
support
truth
of
that
missionaries.
Pastor
They've
Todd
got,
preaches
like,
on a
for the lost,
Sunday
which is
morning,
mostly
or that the
print
Bible
materials.
preaches
They've got,
about throughout the,
what you
you
just
know, the
described,
entirety
Speed
of
the
the
Light, which
Word.
is vehicles
They
and
can't be taught to a
communication.
kindergartner if
And
it's presented on
BGMC
their
stands
level.
for Boys and Girls
And
Missionary
so I
Challenge.
just know that
It's
that's
a
a high
program that
priority for
both
Christians, so
educates
therefore
kids
it is also
about
a
missions
priority
to
for
kind of
young
instill
Christians.
a heart of
So I
compassion
just
within kids
took
so
what
that they know that
the adults typically have
Jesus isn't
as
just for
a
me,
digital
right?
resource,
It's
and
my
I converted it
responsibility
to a
help bring Jesus
physical
to the
paper
world. But
resource.
the second
Because an
category
adult
is to
can go
raise
to
money,
bridgechurch.net.
and
An
BGMC
adult
and the
or a
Assemblies of
teen
God is kind
can
of the
go to the
all-purpose
Bridge Church
anything
app
else
on their
button.
on
So
their
if a
phone, on
missionary
their
has a
tablet, on
need
their
that doesn't
laptop,
fall
and
into the other
kids don't have
categories
access to
in the
that all the
other
time, especially
departments,
the younger
BGMC
ones.
is
And
kind
so
of the-
I just made a
the
printed
fund that says,
version of
okay,
each one of those
What do you,
pathway
whatever you need that
practices.
doesn't fall into those categories,
And so
BGMC
they
will pay
take
for it.
this
And
one
we're
piece of
talking,
paper that says,
I
okay,
think
you
it was
feel
like
like you want to work on
$6
360
million
Faith, pick up the
last year that
360
they
Faith
had as a
card, and
fund,
it has a brief description
internationally,
of
I mean, globally,
this is what
but right. 60
fund
faith
it,
means in
right.
2 or 3 sentences.
fill in those needs.
Here's
And
some
that applies
questions to
everything
ask
from
yourself, 2 or 3 questions
puppets
that
to
say,
water wells
how
to
do you evaluate whether you're living
print
like this?
material.
And here's
It's
3 or 4
refurbished
physical,
classrooms, built
doable
schools.
actions
I
that
mean,
you
there's
can
no
execute
limit
in
to
order to
what
grow in
money
that
you
area.
can pay for. And our goal this year
Oh,
was
that's awesome. I love it. So if you're a parent, because we do have some people that watch online, you got a theme going
Or
people
on.
that
Yeah,
don't
we were
don't
five.
even live around
That's,
here. How would they
500,
access this? I know you have some
55 cents
at
more
both
than
campuses?
our goal
Yeah.
last year.
these
But
pieces of paper
would
that
be
kind of
great.
walks through what
that's
this
our
is.
2021
Yeah, there's 2
goal. If
places
you're
you can
listening to
access
this
them.
in
You
the
can
far
access them
future,
physically
sure
at goal is
one of our
probably
physical
raised
campuses in Economowoc
since
or
this
Waukesha.
podcast.
I
But,
like that.
And those are
Yeah,
always
we're
in
doing
the
very
elementary
well on
kids
our goal
area.
this
So if you
year.
go to
Awesome.
So
the
far,
kids' church area,
we-
there's a box full
depending
of
on
these
how you
little
look at it,
cards, and you
we
pick out the one that you
have
think that
either
your child or that your child
almost
feels
reached
they need
or
to grow in.
exceeded that goal.
And then
because,
when they
my wife
have
Shanda did a
spent a
fundraiser
while
through
growing in
the
that area,
Rose
and
Ministries,
they put it down and pick up a
Flamingo
new one.
Flocking.
Yeah, right. That's good.
But then you can also access it digitally.
Flamingos,
Said
and the price
digitally,
of getting them off
thank
your
you.
lawn is like
If you go to
a donation of
bridgechurch.net/pathway,
whatever it is you want.
That's
And
or
so then
/kids.
that raised
It's on the
enough
kids
money
page.
to,
It's
if we
also
count
on the
that
pathway
towards our
page.
BGMC
Right.
goal,
And so
that would push
it's
us over the
just
top,
one
and
more
we will have
resource.
we would have already
As a
reached our
parent, I
goal by
think
this
a
time.
lot of
And,
parents are very well
if we don't
intentioned. They
count
want
that,
their
we're
kids to
still
be growing
almost there.
spiritually.
We're
They
really,
want to
really
be the
close.
ones
That's incredible.
discipling them.
So we just got a few
But
months
sometimes
left.
it's
This
hard
is,
if you're not intentional
end of
about that.
September.
How would
So
you
we're coming
use
down to
if
the
you
crunch
weren't a kids
time, the
pastor,
last
if you're just a
quarter of the
parent
year
walking
to
up,
kind of
you
meet
grab
those
one of these
goals,
things,
and it
how would
sounds
you
like you guys
use
are gonna
our
hit your
pathways
really
to
close.
really
Do you have a
disciple
celebration,
your
or what are you
kids?
going to do when you hit
Well,
that
there's
goal?
two
Oh,
very
we
key
celebrate
things,
in
and
kids'
neither one
church,
of
and
them
we,
is very difficult.
We
The first key is
celebrate
that
with
you
the
need to
district, and
practice
we kind of
before
make
you
an
teach.
emphasis about it
And
every
so
every
a kid
single
is
month. We
never
set
going
aside
to
one
grow
kids' church
beyond
every
their
month where we
parents while they're
spend,
growing up,
15-20 minutes
unless their parents are
just
willing to
talking
do it
about
themselves.
missions,
So
just
they're
talking
not going to
about
read their
specific
Bible and pray
country,
every day unless
where their
it's
BGMC
a priority
money
in your
goes.
life.
And so it's
And
kind of a
we want to
monthly
make sure that we
celebration of
encourage
here's
you
what your
as
money
a
did
parent
in another country
to
so you can
model
see
whatever you
your-
want your
your
kids
gift
to
at
grow
work.
in, and that's just
But
a
you just
general
got done
principle.
with a
Right.
big event
Once
that you
it's
do
a
every
priority
year
to
called
you
Light
to
24.
grow in
Tell
these
us about
7
that.
pathway
Yes,
practices,
yeah. So we
then
do
it becomes
an
a priority to your
annual
kids
kind of
when you can
walkathon type
transfer that
event that's
knowledge down to
24
them.
hours
But
long. We encourage
actually
students to
practicing
go
it
get
in real life
donations.
is
Some
not
of
as
them
hard
do
as
flat
it
fee,
sounds.
some of them do per lap.
You think
or
it's
per
got to be
mile,
some big
just depending on what
discipleship,
their donors want to do.
intentionality, and really
we just
the
walk
only
around the track for
intentionality you need
24
is to
hours, and so
take one time
it's
a
a
day
challenge. It's a grind. We
to
have
focus
students
on the
that
spiritual.
don't go to sleep the
For
entire
some
time,
families,
and
it's
they're
do a
just
devotion
zombies,
over
at-
breakfast
at
before they leave for school.
6 a.m.
For
in the
some
morning
families, it's
walking,
when
and
they
they
come
still
home
have
from
12
school,
hours left.
do
And
your
so
devotions before
it's
you
a
do your
long
homework.
event,
Or,
but it's
for me,
something
it's
where
when we lay down at
the
night, we get
tagline
the
we
kids
use
ready
is
for bed,
we
and then I
walk so
kneel down
missionaries don't
by
have to.
each
And
of
so
their
just
beds
in the
individually,
same
and
vein of raising
we
money for
pray together,
vehicles,
and that's our
this year our
spiritual
goal is
time.
actually for water
And
wells. So
really,
we're trying to provide clean water wells.
I'll go as far
And
as
I
to say I
believe
don't
the
really
cost,
care
with the
which
organization
area
we're
you're
working with,
growing in, or even if
that
you're
is
using
sponsored
a
by
pathway
Speed the Light.
practice. The
It's
point is to be growing.
$30,000 raises
The whole point of the pathway
well.
practices
Like
is
you
that
can drill
everybody
the
should
well,
be
do
growing.
everything.
And
to
so
get
if
a
for
well
you that's a
that'll be
YouVersion Bible
sustainable
app
throughout,
devotional in the
generations,
mornings,
to be in a
awesome,
village.
do
And they
it.
put
If
that by
all
the
it is
church,
for
and
your
it's
family
all
is
about
making sure that the
meeting
kids are
physical needs
working on
before
their
you can meet spiritual. And so
Bible
just
reading
trying to
guides,
talk with our students
awesome.
about
The
this
point
idea
is
and
to get
understanding of,
growing,
man,
and
one, let's not take
the 7
what we have
pathway
for granted,
practices are
you know,
one of those
access to
tools.
clean water. Yeah.
If you don't
But
want to use the
two,
pathway practices,
caring
then use something.
not just
We just want to
spiritually
make
about
tools
people, but
available
also
if you didn't
for
know
their
where
physical
to
needs,
start.
you know, so that
And so
way
if
we're
you've
able
got
to
that
minister
time
to
every
their
day,
spiritual needs.
just make sure
we
you
just
use
taught
it.
the kids
Say,
about that
okay,
specific
you've
project
been working
in
on
kids'
your
church, and
self-denial practice.
meeting
How's that
physical
been going
needs is
today?
the open door
Have you
that
given up the
Yep.
sugar? Did you
gives
take any extra
missionaries the
desserts at
opportunity to meet
lunchtime?
their
You know,
spiritual
whatever it
needs
is that
as
you're
well.
working on. And
Absolutely.
So on an ongoing
you feel like you've
basis,
grown in
on a
that area?
weekly
Okay,
basis,
which
if they're
one do you
not
want to
doing
work
this
on
big
next?
event
You know, that
fundraiser,
kind of thing.
how do
But it's
you
just to take any
support
time
Speed
at
the
all
Light?
and make sure
Yeah,
that
man,
you're
this summer was
being
incredible.
intentional
Just
about
so
saying
encouraged and inspired by our
spirituality is
students.
an
We do
important
weekly
part of
offerings,
our
and so
daily
a part of
routine.
our offering it
That's
goes.
good. Well, as
towards
we
Speed
wrap
the
up
Light
today,
specifically.
just
But
want to
then we
give
just
you
encourage students to
some
use the
public
gifts
shout
that they
outs for
have, and,
really just
whatever that
taking
looks
this
like
one thing that we
to
said, hey, this is
raise money
important to the
for
church, and
missions. So
you've
we
really
just had a
made it
student who's a
accessible
7th grader.
and awesome.
He
for our
loves
younger
making
students
pizzas.
at Bridge Church.
So
So
he'll make pizzas.
kudos
and
to
like a
you
stone fire
for just
thing at
leading
their
that
house.
charge and saying,
And
hey,
he went around door to door in his
this and
neighborhood
make it
and
simple
said,
and
"Hey,
make
I'm
it
making
easy for
pizzas
kids
for
to
clean
grab
water.
and really work
Would you
on.
be willing to
Well, the
donate?
bonus is
I'll make you a
that
pizza. Tell me what you want on it."
not
And he
only is
raised
every
$600
adult topic
in a couple
accessible
weeks
to
by
a
just
kid if you
making
teach it
pizzas, and then
simply.
we have people that sell.
Surprising how many
different vegetables.
volunteers
They
I've
grow in
had
their
come
garden.
through
We
my
have people
children's
that,
ministry that say,
babysit,
"Wow,
pick
this
up extra
kid stuff
shifts
is
of
really
chores,
good
or
stuff
they'll-
because it's like
they'll
really
mow, and they
simplified
do
and
all
makes it
these
easy
things
to digest." So
raise money
if you as a
for
teen
missions,
or
and
an
of course,
adult feel
different
like the
challenges that
Bridge
we
Church
give them.
Pathways page
Big events
has
we
too
do
much
is a
information,
rowathon
just
each
pick up one of the
March.
kids' cards.
Yeah.
So that's
They're there
I've
for you.
had
row,
adults pick
marathon
up
at
those
a
kids'
CrossFit
cards and
gym.
say, "Oh,
The walkathon,
this is a much
we just
simpler
did Speed Light
synopsis."
24, then we
And
have
so
a
Well,
chili
you
cook-off,
go
brownie
ahead and
cook-off
use it.
coming up.
It's a resource for
That,
anybody. It
I'm
doesn't have to
excited
be for a
I'm
kid.
excited.
That's
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much
participate
for
in the
joining
event.
us today on the
And
Next Gen
just come to the-
podcast.
come to
This
the chili
again is just a
cook-off, support that
library for
student who
you
says, "Hey, I'm
to
in
have
Alabama."
resources
But
for
how do
whatever's coming
parents,
up. We've
encourage
talked about
their kids
missions
to
and
participate
camps
in
and
missions
talked
giving?
about a lot of things
Yeah,
already.
I think
And if you have any of those
think
that
it always has to
come
be
back
modeled.
into your life,
So
always feel free to go back and watch.
telling your
But thank
kids
you guys so
to
much for
participate
listening
in
today.
this thing,
Pastor Phil,
you
thank you for joining us. And have a great week. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to be like, hey, this is so kids